everyone, welcome back to our webinar series on use cases in Federated API Management. Our goal in these webinars is, again, to dive deeper into the specific use cases that may drive organizations to adopt Federated API Management. And we've previously discussed the use cases moving to the cloud and unified API catalogs, which you can watch on our YouTube channel. And if you've already seen one of those previous webinars, you can skip the introduction in this video. To do so, you can simply use the chapters on this video that appear below. So today we will focus on the use case of brand shops. But before we start with that, let's start with a quote from a recent market guide for API gateways from Gartner. You can see that quote here on the slide. And according to that report that Gartner wrote, gateways are becoming a commodity. And organizations are looking for a management layer instead of another gateway to add. And if you look at what Gartner VP analyst Mark O'Neill said at the API Days in Paris last year, that's exactly in line with that. So he mentioned that people want to do all kinds of things with their gateway, and they may have different requirements and needs they try to handle with this gateway. And all that can result in a giant gateway saurus that is really difficult to manage. And this is why there is a trend towards bring your own gateway, where organizations have their own gateways and only want the management layer on top of them. So let's examine how this might apply to your organization. Many companies do have a similar setup with various tools that work with or around APIs. And these services are typically included in the API full lifecycle management, but most companies don't utilize all of them. So this can result in something like what we see on the slide. It can result in multiple networks of mesh services that work together, and that makes it really difficult to track where the source of truth is for your APIs. And this is exactly where Federated API Management comes in. By implementing this single source of truth at the very center of your API landscape, like we have it here on the slide, you can keep track of the APIs and their execution. And this is directly tying into your API roadmap and your strategic goals. So this core that we have here is absolutely essential because it is responsible for discovering, provisioning, and securing all of your APIs. And the rest of the tools and services all around this center in the middle, these can be interchangeable and depending on the team's needs and requirements. And as the gateway, as we've just heard, becomes a commodity too, also the gateway will be interchangeable and replaceable with the best fit for your scenario. And this, of course, brings numerous benefits. So let's start with the first one. And that means you can catalog and manage the access to all of your APIs in one central location, no matter what the platform is. So, of course, you're directly improving the developer experience and you're driving adoption. And this central location allows developers to easily see if an API already exists, how it works, and they can access it instead of searching multiple portals, for example. Because, let's be honest, they don't have the time to waste searching for all this information, and this shortens the time to value and improves your developer experience immensely. The second one that we have in the middle here is that you can automate the APIs on any platform. Meaning, in the end, you're just simplifying the complexity and you're reducing costs. Because with Federated API Management in place, you can provision, change, and version your APIs in all environments, no matter the vendor. And you just get rid of all the manual work involved and can automate your processes. And you're basically enabling your platform operations team, whatever you have, to handle these tasks. A third one on the right is that you can manage compliance and protect your sensitive data because you have just this single set of policies and procedures, and this makes it very easy to monitor and enforce security and compliance, which in the end reduces the risk and ensures that your APIs meet industry standards. And of course, overall, you just have a better visibility and control over your APIs with real-time analytics, with monitoring. You can easily see how your API is performing and to identify any issues, making it way easier to optimize their performance and ensure that they meet the needs of your organization and your strategic goals and you can adhere to your API roadmap. So with all that what we've just heard, that Federated API Management is ensuring that your APIs are secure, compliant, and performing optimally. You also see that you need this single source of truth at the center of your API landscape that we just talked about before. And with this single source of truth, you can manage access to all of these APIs. You can automate them and ensure security and compliance, all while reducing complexity and costs. And this is exactly where our product, the APIIDA API Control Plane, comes in. Because the APIIDA API Control Plane empowers you to do exactly that. It empowers you to utilize Federated API Management to its full extent and serves as the single source of truth that you do need in the middle of your API ecosystem. So let's step into how this fits with the use case we're talking about today. And this is brand shops. And firstly, I want to begin with clarifying what are brand shops. Let's define what that means and understand what's the importance in today's competitive market. So when you think of a brand shop, you think of a setup where a single company or holding or group, whatever you have, owns multiple distinct brands. And each of these brands are targeting a specific market segment or offering a unique value proposition. So in such a scenario, the company aims to maintain strict isolation between the different brands, just to ensure that the users and stakeholders do not necessarily know they are part of the same corporate umbrella. And let's make this concept more tangible. Let's take a hypothetical example, like I have on the slide here. Imagine we have a company called Fashion United. And Fashion United is a holding that owns 3 distinct clothing brands. We have them here. It's Elegant Couture, a high-end luxury brand. We have Urban Edge, which is like the trendy streetwear brand. And we have EcoThreads, meaning they have eco-friendly, sustainable fashion. So we have these 3 very different brands. They have a very different audience. They have a unique style, a different design philosophy, and so on, so on, so on. Now, Fashion United, the holding above, would really want to keep these brands separate in the eyes of the customers and other stakeholders they have to ensure that they continue to have their unique identities. And this separation, of course, extends beyond just branding and marketing efforts. It also includes the technical aspects of the operation, such as, for example, the API catalogs and API portals they use to manage and share their digital resources, mainly APIs. So in this context of API management, this is what I just meant and said, is that this maintaining of strict isolation between, for example, catalogs and portals for each brand is crucial, because this allows each of these brands to operate independently, manage its APIs efficiently, and really tailor its API offerings to its target audience without interference from or confusion with other brands. So to achieve this, the main question is, how should the API infrastructure look like? And there are most likely 2 options, and we will look at these 2 options in a second. Option 1, as we see here, is using a single API catalog. In the context of our example of Fashion United, that owns these 3 distinct clothing brands that we also have here on that slide, this means that if they choose to go with one single API catalog, all the APIs, no matter if it's from Elegant Couture, Urban Edge, or EcoThreads, would be available in this one location, in this one catalog marketplace, whatever you call it. And this approach, of course, has some benefits, but it also comes with several challenges. So first, by using this single instance of the API gateway, Fashion United can potentially save costs. Of course, they do not need to deploy, maintain multiple API gateway instances. This is very cost effective, especially, for example, smaller companies or companies that are just starting to explore API management or are just generally tight in budget, whatever it is. However, the challenges in this approach do outweigh the benefits. And one of the significant challenges is that this unique brand identity that we talked about before can get lost when the APIs are combined in one single catalog. Because you would have the Elegant Couture's luxury offerings listed alongside APIs for Urban Edge's streetwear products. And that could really create confusion for developers, partners, whatever stakeholders you have, that are trying to identify the appropriate APIs for their needs. And so, of course, these brands do compete for customers' attention within this catalog. And it's easy to overwhelm developers and other stakeholders by the sheer number of offerings that you have in that catalog. And they may have difficulty finding what they need really and get lost on the way. And that's a way to lose customers, and that's not what you want. And lastly, there's just no isolation. We already talked about that isolation, how important it is between the brands in this first approach. And it really makes it difficult, for example, to ensure security too. Because you might have cases where people can access APIs they don't really have permission for, just because it's managed in this unified way, without any real isolation for the different brands. The second option is multiplying the API infrastructure. So when we look at this option, like you see here, each brand under Fashion United has its dedicated API catalog and underlying infrastructure, meaning we have one gateway for each of the brands and we have one catalog for each of the brands. So one significant benefit of this, of course, is the exact opposite of what we've seen before. So the unique brand identities are preserved here. You can easily find, access the APIs that are relevant to your specific needs. You're not getting confused by offering from other brands because you simply can't see them. So that's very effective, and you can really cater to your target audience better. And you do have that isolation that we talked about of all these three catalogs, and you can ensure the strict access control and security of each of the brand. You can prevent unauthorized access to APIs that belong to other brands in the company, and so on. However, of course, also this approach comes with a set of challenges. And the most prominent challenge is the high complexity that is involved in managing these multiple API infrastructures. I mean, when you look at that here, you would need a whole gateway instance below, and you would need teams to manage that. You could even say to the extent that you would have an own team for each of these infrastructures because it's different brands. So you would potentially not just increasing costs, you would also increase the overall management overhead. And additionally, of course, having numerous API gateway instances comes with higher costs. So let's bring all that, what we've seen just now in the last slides, together. We've seen that there are quite some challenges when managing APIs for multiple brands and using traditional API management solution. And in a minute, we will look at how Federated API Management can address these challenges effectively. So challenge one is something we've already heard of. We have that lack of separation between API catalogs and portals for the different brand. This can lead to confusion, we've heard that. We may have difficulty distinguishing APIs from different brands, or even accidentally accessing APIs that belong to different brands. So, second one is we have difficulty maintaining brand identity and uniqueness. Same here. It's not just about marketing. Traditional API management solutions may just not offer sufficient customization options for each brand, which can then lead to a diluted brand identity. So, for example, to make that clear, if you have that shared portal for the eco-thread and for Urban Edge, you would share the same design elements and the same interface, and users may just not associate the APIs with the respective brands, and that would weaken the brand's overall market presence. And of course, it's especially detrimental for organizations operating in highly competitive markets, where brand differentiation is crucial for success. What would you need is providing extensive customization options for the portal and catalogs so that you can ensure having this unique and consistent experience for each of the brands. Another challenge, of course, we've heard about that too, is that there are security and access control concerns. Because traditional solutions might just not offer the level of granularity needed to handle multiple brands' requirements. So, a generic access control policy, for example, might inadvertently grant developers from one brand access to APIs from another brand, potentially exposing sensitive data and causing security issues. And what we would want here is to solve that is, of course, fine-grained access control mechanisms. You would want organizations to define and enforce security policies for each brand, and that data remains protected and access is only granted to authorized users for each brand. That's the point. And all this leads to inefficiencies in managing multiple brands' APIs. This can be very cumbersome and inefficient with traditional API management solutions. Organizations might need to manage several separate systems for each brand, and that leads to increased complexity. You have duplicated efforts, higher maintenance costs, and so on. Just think of, for example, a simple thing like a security update that would need to be applied to all brands' APIs. It might require manual intervention and coordination across multiple systems, and so on. So what you have here is you're increasing the likelihood of human error and delays. And that's really something you want to avoid. Because in the end, it also, it hinders your organization's ability to innovate and respond to market changes quickly. And Federated API Management really streamlines this process by offering a unified platform to manage APIs across all brands, no matter what infrastructure you have below. And that makes it really easy to coordinate and maintain the APIs. A fifth is that you have a limited scalability and adaptability. And that's really partnering up with the inefficiencies that we have and what we just talked about. Because as organizations grow and acquire new brands, maybe traditional solutions may just struggle to accommodate the increasing number of APIs and brands. So, for example, just think about our Fashion United would acquire a new sub-company, sub-brand that specialized in whatever, shoes. And you would now have to integrate the APIs, existing APIs, and the existing infrastructure in what you have already. So that might require significant time and resources, potentially causing, again, disruptions and, of course, delays. You have a lot of manual processes also here. And that really makes it hard for organizations to grow and adapt to changing market conditions. So what you would want here is a scalable solution that makes such things easier to grow your number of brands, to grow your APIs. And that's something that Federated API Management can do for you. Last but not least, for me, one of the most important points, to be honest, it's the inconsistent developer experience. And that may be due to the lack of standardized tools and processes across brands. Developers may need to familiarize themselves with different tools, APIs, and workflows for each brand. And what you then get is a really steep learning curve and lower productivity. So just when you look at one developer, you have different developer portals and they may not be standardized. You have different information. So a developer that comes to the dev portal for your haute couture brand may be used to the processes and tools there. And then when he goes to the EcoThreads catalog and it is completely different, this just delays your whole process and lowers the productivity. And what you do here is you create bottlenecks, basically, because they need an immense amount of time to try to find out what they have to do with these APIs and these catalogs. And what you want to achieve is that you have a consistent and streamlined developer experience. You want a unified set of tools and processes for all brands. You want to promote collaboration. You want innovation. And you want all that no matter what is below in that infrastructure, because the devs shouldn't care if that's running on an AWS, if it's running on an Azure. That's nothing they should care about. So Federated API Management really does offer a powerful solution to these challenges. And adopting Federated API Management can help you maintain that strict isolation between catalogs and portals. It can help you with the brand identity and the security and so on. It really helps you streamlining all that and keeping your brands like you want them to have. So from what we've seen, the options before option 1 and 2 that we've looked at, they aren't ideal. And with all these challenges we've talked about, we know what our goals are basically. We want to solve these challenges. And the APIIDA API control plane is crucial for achieving the desired level of isolation and flexibility because you want both. As an intermediate layer, it enables the creation of distinct brand shops for each brand, each with its dedicated developer portal, API catalog, call it whatever you want. And these portals are tailored to fit their respective audiences. They are ensuring different users, customers, and branding for each brand. So you have a high customizability. And by using the control plane, you can ensure this complete isolation we talked about. You can have that above the layer and efficiently manage the infrastructure below. Because as you can see here on the slide, they would share the infrastructure below. And then you would have the separated developer portals with the customized experience for each brand, displaying only the relevant information and APIs to their respective users. So one of the key advantages of this setup, the ability to make changes to the underlying infrastructure without even affecting the consumer experience. Because the APIIDA API control plane serves as kind of an abstraction layer. And that's offering organizations the whole flexibility to modify the infrastructure as needed. This could mean that gateways will be shifted to the cloud, or new gateway systems can be added, old ones can be retired. No matter what your needs and requirements are, you can just do that without impacting the consumer's view or access to your APIs. And of course, this also comes with huge benefits in security and access control, because you can ensure all these policies across the brands. You are centralizing the management within the APIIDA API control plane. You can ensure that each of your brand adheres to the same high standards, and still you're not influencing the consumer experience in the catalog. So the whole implementation strategy with the APIIDA API control plane simplifies the API lifecycle management across all these multiple brands that you have. And organizations can manage API development, deployment, and versioning for all brands from this one single point of truth. We've heard about that before, from this one single location in the middle. And that's reducing complexity and improving overall efficiency. So that's how you can use the APIIDA API control plane in the context of brand shops to just streamline the whole API management process and provide more flexibility for infrastructure changes that you may have in the future. Let's look at these benefits again, bring them together, and it's basically what I just talked about. So what do we have? We have this enhanced brand separation and customization. You can create tailored API catalogs, tailored API portal for each of your brands, ensuring they maintain their unique identity. You have a seamless, personalized experience for your users, developers, stakeholders, as they interact with the API specific to each brand. And what's the result? You gain a stronger brand loyalty, you gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And also, of course, you have the improved security and access control. We talked about that a lot in the last 20 minutes. It helps you really to eliminate the risk of unauthorized access. It keeps your API secure while still providing the right level of access to the right people. And in today's digital landscape, robust security is just non-negotiable. And the Federated API architecture delivers just that. Third one here on that slide, you're streamlining your API management across multiple brands. And Federated API Management really simplifies this process. It allows you to manage all your brands' APIs through a single unified platform. you can easily govern, monitor, update your APIs across all these different brands. No matter what the infrastructure is below, you still have that strict separation. So you're reducing your operational overhead, you're increasing your efficiency. And I know we all don't really like that word because it's kindly overused, but you make your organization more agile. Call it flexible if you want. You get that freedom of choice with whatever you want to do with that infrastructure below. And last three benefits are, of course, you facilitate innovation, you have a faster time to market, because you can just foster that culture of innovation. I talked about that just a minute ago. You enable individual teams to experiment, develop, and deploy new APIs without worrying about impacting other brands, because you have that isolation. And of course, you have that scalability and flexibility. I just talked about that. And you have the centralized governance of distributed execution. Meaning, with that federated approach, you just combine the best of both worlds. You can establish organization-wide policies. You can establish standards, best practices, whatever you have, while still having these individual brands operating autonomously. And that's just a balance you need to ensure a consistent API management approach across your whole organization, because you really want to see the strategic goal. You want to adhere to your API roadmap, but you don't want to lose your creativity and your innovation that drive your brands forwards. And that's what you gain here. So, easy question, where do I go from here? Of course, we have seen that the whole topic of branch shops is really something that can be cumbersome, and having a good API strategy below that is critical for managing your APIs in the organization. And for this, we would advise to have an enterprise-wide API roadmap in place. And to help you dive deeper into this and to really excel, we have developed what we call the API Management Maturity Assessment. That can be found on our website, and you can just look at where you stand with your company and where you can maybe improve your game when it comes to API management. And of course, don't wait. Now's the time. You can just go to our website, you can look at the APIIDA API control plane and start right now. It's easy to set up, and you can just test it for free. And if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out. We're always happy to help you here. And we will talk again in the next webinar about use case for federated API management, meaning group structure this time. And if you would like to meet us in person, we would always love to meet up with you. So we will be in New York for the API Days in May. And yeah, maybe we'll see you there. Thank you all for listening and have a great day.